Reduce, reuse, recycle. This alliteration is often drilled into our minds at a young age, and for good reason. Proper recycling is key to a healthy planet, but are we really doing the most with our current recycling methods? Welcome to another episode of Ethical Exchange. I'm Butler Dandy, and today I will be walking you through the process of recycling, past, present, and future, and how we can properly utilize our use of recyclable products in order to protect our planet. When you think of modern-day recycling, the idea of tossing your used materials into a bin to be sent off elsewhere for recycling may come to mind. While this is true for our current recycling practices, the act of reusing materials has been commonplace since ancient times. For instance, the first recorded use of recycled paper was documented in 9th century Japan. At this time, the most common materials for papermaking were mulberry, gompi, and hemp. But when these materials began to dwindle, papermakers discovered that waste paper could be remade into sheets of paper. One example of how this was done comes from the 12th century, when the emperor's wife recycled her deceased husband's poems and letters, writing a sutra on the paper to wish peace upon his soul. Though there are many instances of mass use of recycled materials in history, we would like to focus on instances of innovation in the recycling process as it began to rapidly grow around the world. 1960 marked a huge step in recycling when the Rittenhouse Mill, America's first paper mill, began producing recycled paper with old fabrics, cloths, cotton, and linen. The mill used this paper for printing and publication, and operated until the mid-1800s. The first instance of metal recycling was seen in 1776, during America's fight for independence from the British. A statue of George King III in New York was torn down, melted, and converted into bullets. In 1813, Benjamin Law of Bately, West Yorkshire, invented the shoddy process, in which cloths and rags were used to create recycled wool. The shoddy industry grew rapidly, with 7,000 tons of recycled wool created per year by 1860. Following the creation of the Hall-Héroult process that sparked the boom in the production of aluminum in 1886, the first aluminum recycling plant was constructed in Chicago, Illinois in 1904. In 1977, the first deposit of an empty glass jar into the very first glass recycling bank kicked off the nationwide appearance of bottle banks in South Yorkshire. Since glass is an infinitely recyclable material, the introduction of bottle banks, a place where the public can take empty glass jars and bottles to be recycled, was a pivotal moment that made the recycling of glass accessible to all. The Blue Box recycling system was introduced in Canada in 1983. This system, which is still in use across the globe today, offers a simple solution for sorting and recycling materials such as plastic, paper, glass, aluminum, steel, and much more. The first electronic recycling program, known as the Sweco recycling system, was introduced in Switzerland in 1991. This program employed the collection of old, unwanted electronics, which were taken and recycled free of charge. In 2003, England enacted the Household Waste Recycling Act, which ruled that local authorities in England must provide each and every household with a collection of at least 2 types of recyclable materials by 2010. Continuing their efforts to reduce plastic waste, England introduced a 5p charge for plastic bags in shops throughout the country. This resulted in an 80% drop in the use of plastic bags in England. While history has demonstrated several successful cases of recycling and its positive impact on the world, there has been a huge uptake in waste in recent years. In 1960, it was estimated that each American produced 2.68 pounds of garbage per day. By 2017, that number skyrocketed to 4.51 pounds. Reduce, reuse, recycle is a simple enough mantra to remember, so why do we have so much trouble implementing it? Though many of the materials we use on a regular basis are recyclable, they can easily become contaminated with food waste or even just by placing them in the wrong bin. This contamination prevents large batches of material from being recycled. Another issue stems from the improper recycling of materials that are not recyclable, like plastic straws and bags, or recyclable materials being sent to the wrong facilities and instead being discarded. Though improper recycling by common folk definitely plays a role in the decline in successful recycling, imported materials pose a much greater risk. For decades, China was responsible for the recycling of almost half of the world's discarded materials, due to their need for such materials in their booming manufacturing sector. In 2016, however, the United States exported 16 million tons of plastic, paper, and metals to China, around 30% of which was contaminated by non-recyclable material. China's countryside and oceans were polluted by this waste, pushing China to ban the import of most plastics and other materials that were not new. The trashing of non-recyclable imports continued when 68,000 containers of waste were sent to Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand in 2018 following China's ban. When these countries also implemented bans, the US diverted its waste to Cambodia, Bangladesh, Ghana, Laos, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Senegal, countries with cheap labor and lax environmental rules. To this day, the US still ships over 1 million metric tons of plastic waste abroad per year, an estimated 20 to 70% of which is unusable and ultimately gets discarded. Landfills are one of the most pressing issues that arise from the improper disposal of waste. Cheap to operate and simple to use, landfills and dumps where all kinds of trash is disposed have a disastrous effect on the environment. According to the Romanian Ministry of Environment and Forests, each hectare of landfill site development means the loss of approximately 30 to 300 species. Local species are affected by landfills as well, with some mammals and birds being replaced by species that feed on refuse, such as rats and crows. Improper waste disposal is one of the main causes of pollution in the air, soil, and water worldwide, resulting in greenhouse gas effects and causing significant harm to marine and wildlife. An estimated 2/3 of landfill waste contains biodegradable organic matter that decomposes and releases methane gas, which contributes to global warming by trapping heat in the atmosphere. As mentioned earlier, waste products often make their way into our oceans, polluting the water and endangering the animals and plant life that live there. There is currently an estimated 100 million tons of plastic floating around in the Earth's oceans. An estimated 100,000 marine animals and 1 million seabirds die on an annual basis from being entangled in plastic. Rivers, lakes, and oceans can also be contaminated by noxious chemicals that form in landfills and seep into groundwater. These chemicals can deoxygenate the water, resulting in the death of aquatic life. Additionally, the contamination of groundwater impacts soil quality of surrounding areas, which can have devastating effects on local vegetation. A little-known landfill fact is that they are often buried over and become suburban home sites in later years. You could be living on top of millions of pounds of garbage and you would never know it. As the global demand for paper, cardboard, and plastic grows, so too does the demand for high-quality recycled materials. The key to fixing our recycling problem, especially in the US, lies in the development of the domestic market. There is a huge call for the improvement of technology for sorting and recovering materials, incorporating more recycled material into products, and creating a demand for products created with recycled materials. According to Nilda Mesa, a director of Urban Sustainability and Equity Planning Program at the Earth Institute's Center for Sustainable Urban Development, requiring cities and institutions to purchase a certain percentage of recycled content has aided in the demand for recycled content. She also added that limiting the disposal of construction and demolition debris and instead encouraging recycling has been an effective measure in setting up a stable system that allows for the growth of the recycling market. Recycling guidelines and regulations can vary based on location, but here are a few areas that have created a beneficial recycling system for their communities. San Francisco, California keeps 80% of its waste out of landfills with the implementation of a system of 3 color-coded bins for disposal of items: blue for recyclables, green for compostables, and black for landfill. As of July 2020, stores began to charge 25 cents for the use of plastic checkout bags. Los Angeles, California recycles almost 80% of its waste, and restaurants are required to compost their food waste. Companies also receive a tax break based on the amount of recycling they do. All properties in Austin, Texas are required to provide recycling and composting to their tenants and employees, and large construction projects must reuse or recycle at least half of the debris produced. Similar to San Francisco, Germany uses colored bins to recycle different colored glass and other items. The country uses a green dot recycling system, in which a green dot is placed on packaging material to indicate that the manufacturer contributes to the cost of collecting and recycling. South Korea recycles approximately 54% of its trash, including 95% of its food waste, by providing free recycling pickup, providing bins for organic waste, and charging for disposal of other trash. Japan holds individuals responsible for the recycling of their waste by requiring residents to wash items, remove labels, fold cartons, and label their waste. Some areas, like the small village of Kamikatsu, sort their trash into 34 categories. Taiwan employs the use of yellow trucks that go through neighborhoods playing music to let residents know when it's time to dump their trash. These trucks are followed by another truck that carries 13 different bins for residents to sort their recyclables, which are then sent off to facilities that will recycle the waste into building materials. The country also uses smart recycling booths that will accept bottles and cans in exchange for added value to transit cards. Scientists around the world are hard at work coming up with intuitive solutions to the world's recycling problem. A major focus of the scientific community is what is known as the Plastic End-of-Life Challenge. The implementation of this system would completely transform our current linear system of make, take, dispose into a closed-loop system in which plastic is used endlessly. Other significant advancements in the material science world include the inventions of John Lehman, inventor of pure cycle technologies. Lehman developed a revolutionary process of removing contaminants from polypropylene plastic waste in order to transform it into a virgin-like resin that can easily be reused, as it is the basis for plastic products. The scientific world is making leaps and bounds towards a more sustainable recycling process, and big cities and industries are switching to sustainable materials. But what can we, as consumers, do? Aside from making sure that your recyclable materials are clean and properly sorted, there are a number of simple changes you can make to your daily life in order to reduce the amount of waste you contribute to landfills. The act of reducing and reusing items encompasses much more than plastic. You can find perfectly usable goods that have been previously owned, such as clothing, building materials, and so much more. Before you buy something, ask yourself, can I purchase this used? You could even save yourself some money. For items that have to be purchased new, look for products that use less packaging, are made from recycled or biodegradable materials, or are easily reusable. When less raw materials go into the production of a product, it is often cheaper for both the producer and consumer, and by reusing things that you could buy a single-use version of, such as silverware, cups, and plates, you create less waste. If you have excess materials or products that you've considered tossing, look for a place that you can donate them instead. You never know when someone might be in need of the very thing you are planning to trash. Donations are often tax-deductible as well. There are so many ways that you can reduce, reuse, and recycle that it would take me forever to list them all here. Instead, I will link some resources in the description below. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Ethical Exchange. As always, we don't expect you to make the switch towards being 100% environmentally friendly overnight. Instead, with this series, we hope that we can educate our viewers and help you make small steps towards sustainability. Do you have any cool recycling ideas? What topic should we cover next? Leave some suggestions in the comments below, and we will see you guys next time. Bye!